here. Welcome. It's great to see you all. Welcome to another edition of our lecture series here at the University of Macau in the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Herman Cappelen. Professor Cappelen is a chair professor of philosophy at the University of Hong Kong. Previously, he has held positions at the universities of Oslo, St. Andrews, Oxford, and Vassar College, to name just some of his other titles, and I really do mean just some. He is currently the director of AI and Humanity Lab at the University of Hong Kong. He's the co-director of Concept Lab at the University of Oslo and of Concept Lab Hong Kong. Holds a position on the steering committee of the Institute of Data Science, also at the University of Hong Kong. Formerly, he was the director of the Arche Philosophical Research Center in St. Andrews for several years. He's published numerous books, and again, I do mean numerous, just some of which include Insensitive Semantics, which he published with Ernie Lepore via Wiley Blackwell in 2005. In somewhat more recent history, Philosophy Without Intuitions, a title that should be familiar to some of our MA students from last semester, where we had the pleasure of reading some excerpts, published with Oxford University Press in 2012. And most recently, I hope, unless you've already managed to get something else under a forthcoming status, The Concept of Democracy, an essay on conceptual amelioration and abandonment with Oxford University Press 2023. Currently, Professor Cappelen's research focuses include the philosophy of AI, conceptual engineering, conceptual foundations of political discourse, externalism in the philosophy of mind and language, and the connections between all of these things. Today, on behalf of both himself and his co-author, Josh Dever, Professor Cappelen will be presenting a paper to us titled AI, Safety, and Alignment. As always, just before I pass things along, a brief note about procedure. After the talk, there will be time for Q&A, so you're all encouraged to formulate some questions, comments, and prepare them for after the talk. And on this occasion, we have to walk maybe 3 feet to our left to enjoy the reception together afterwards. So with all of that being said, I would love it if we could all come together in welcoming Professor Cappelen.
Hey, thank you so much for having me and for the invitation. And thanks to Ben for showing us around a little bit before. It's really great to be on this campus. I've been at HQ for 4 years, but haven't been here. So this is really amazing place. So this is co-authored work with Josh Dever, and Ben was talking a little bit about books that I write. This is a new book that we have finished. This is our second AI related book together. And the part that I'm going to talk about is from the last part of that book. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the main part of that book as I go along, because most of what we are interested in is about whether systems like ChatGPT can understand language, can perform speech acts, can, and if they have the ability to form beliefs, whether they can have desires, whether they can perform actions in the way that humans can perform actions. So we're interested in this whole cluster of cognitive and linguistic capacities and abilities. That's what the book is mostly about. It's not mostly about moral philosophy. But then towards the end, we talk about these issues about AI safety and alignment. And I'm trying to understand that part better. I'm not primarily a moral philosopher, but I do have views. So this is I'm sort of trying out some of the things I'm least confident of in this talk. Okay, so so I take it that all of you have heard something about people who are very scared of AI, that they think the world can be destroyed and eliminated and humans can be obliterated and made superfluous and horrible things can happen to us because of artificial intelligence developing at super high speed that we can't control. And so that's the existential threat from AI that people are very worried about. And it's in reply to that that people say, okay, so how are we going to avoid being destroyed by AI? So there's a lot of questions you can ask about that. Is that really going to happen? How soon is it going to happen? How would it happen? Is it at all technologically realistic? There are issues like that. That's not what I'm going to talk about. But there's a particular kind of solution that I want to talk about that's dominating all the discourse among philosophers, computer scientists, and people in the public sphere that worry about AI. And that's the thing you can think of as alignment. And the thought behind alignment is the way we're going to manage to not be destroyed and eliminated and enslaved by AI is to make sure that they have the right values. So we have to align its values with ours. That's the idea. And there are people hired by all the big tech companies all over the world trying to work on alignment. These people also call them, they worry about safety because it's the way to make them safe is to make sure that the AI, insofar as it is an agent, has the kind of values that we have. If it turns out to be a horrible, racist, evil, fascist that wants to destroy humanity, that would be awful. So make sure it's not like that. It's going to have good values. So I'll give you in the first part of the talk, a little introduction to that and a little bit of the target way of thinking about that I'm going to be talking about. And then the rest of the talk, it makes like a few different points that I'll give you an overview of later. But I'm very skeptical of this alignment talk. So this is a sort of skepticism about this way of thinking about the problem, plus some other points that I'll mention along the way. Okay, that's the. So it's going to be a little bit important to see just how people describe this issue of alignment and what it is they worry about. So I'm going to read to you some of the kind of classical passages. A lot of this goes back to that book by Nick Bostrom. And Nick Bostrom is one of the people we often refer to. And then there's Stuart Russell. It's a great book by Max Tegmark. And I talk mostly about Russell and Tegmark. So this is the way they articulate the problem. He says, we may suffer from a failure of value alignment. We may perhaps inadvertently imbue machines with objectives that are imperfectly aligned with our own. Notice that word imbue. I'm going to talk about that later. And the prologue to Max Tegmark's Life 3.0, it's a great book about these issues, if you want to look at it, describes in some detail a scenario in which a super intelligent machine gradually assumes economic and political control over the entire world while remaining essentially undetected. The internet and the global scale machines that it supports, the ones that already interact with billions of users on a daily basis, provides the perfect medium for growth of a machine control over humans. So that's the concern. So if you've got that kind of super powerful machine. Now, the thing is that the machine's purpose, if there is one, must be to maximize the realization of human values. So there are these things, human values, and we hope that the machine will try to maximize those values. In particular, it has no purpose of its own and no innate desire to protect itself. The machine must be initially uncertain about what those human values are, and the machine may learn more about human values as it goes along, of course, but it may never achieve complete certainty. So imagine this machine, it develops over time, and its hope is that it'll look at what we're doing and learn from what we're doing something that can be called human values, and that in learning that, it will not abuse the power that it can have. And I really like, I'm not going to read so many quotes, but I'll go through this because I like this part of Tegmark. He compares it to bringing up children. And Tegmark says, we have many strategies for imbuing our children with goals, some more successful than others. As I've learned from raising two teenage boys, when those to be persuaded are computers rather than people, the challenge is known as the value loading problem. And it's even harder than moral education of children. The time window during which you can load your goals into an AI may be very short, a brief period between when it's too dumb to get you and too smart to let you. The reason that value loading can be harder with machines than with people is that their intelligence growth can be much faster. Whereas children can spend many years in that magic persuadable window where their intelligence is comparable to that of their parents, an AI might, like Prometheus, blow through this window in a matter of days or hours. But even if you build an AI that will both learn and adopt your goals, you still haven't finished solving the goal alignment problem. What if your AI's goals evolve as it gets smarter? How are you going to guarantee that it retains your goals no matter how much recursive self-improvement it undergoes? So do you get a feel for what they think the problem is? Just like we do with children, we try to bring them up with values that we feel are acceptable to the society around them and that will make them good citizens of a community. We want to do the same thing with these AIs. And the reason it's a good comparison is because we have made machines that in a way are agents. They can perform actions. They can change the world. They can change individuals. They can change societies. We're going to use them to make super important decisions, political decisions, medical decisions, military decisions, decisions about healthcare. These are very important decisions that are going to be made. And we want those decisions to be made with a certain goal in mind. And those goals should be aligned with the goals that we have as humans. So there are two kinds of worries that spring out of this literature. And I want to focus on the first one. So there's a kind of local and the literature on this. So for those of you who don't know this literature, these people fight, like they really hate each other. So there's a group of people who are, they just think like, if you're going to use AI to make decisions about who's going to get parole or who should be in prison for how long or who should get certain medical treatments and who shouldn't, we have to just fine tune what the AI is doing in that local area and make sure that it's making good decisions. And that's really hard. You got to know medicine, you got to know the law, you got to be sort of detailed involved in particular cases. So that's a big project for anyone who currently is involved in developing AI, like fine tuning it for particular purposes. And the people who work on that, there's like, that's the important thing. Everything else is just fantasy. And then there's this big issue that goes back to Boostrom and Tegmark. And there's like, well, what if things get like super, super, super smart and they can take over the world? How are we going to stop it from doing that? So these people don't want to think so much about that. But this is the thing that makes people, some of the smartest people, some of the people who started all of the thing we think about as AI today, like Hinton, Jeff Hinton in Toronto in the 90s, basically created the foundation for what we think about as AI today. Then he started working for Google, and he left Google because he was so scared that AIs very soon, sooner than we can imagine, or we can imagine it, but you would expect, could cause massive damage to all humanity. So these people are not thinking about fine tuning. They're just thinking about this existential risk part. That's the part I'm going to be talking about. This is the thing that I think is misconstrued in some ways. So I'm going to be kind of arguing against Hinton and those people say, I don't see that the solution you're presenting is helpful, is what I'm going to be doing. I don't have anything to say about people who want to think about just how to make the self-driving cars not hit kangaroos in Australia, because that's a big issue. Because like they hadn't been trained on kangaroos, suddenly there's like kangaroos around and they get really worried, and you got to fine tune it so it can adjust to kangaroos. That's a real, it's not really a philosophical issue, right? But these big issues about how we can align, that's what I think philosophers can contribute a bit. Okay, so the next few slides. So since the talk has many parts, 4 parts, I want to just prepare you for those talks so you can keep the whole thing in your head as we go along, and then I'll give you some arguments as we go along. So I told you I was writing this book with Josh Dever, or second book, In Defense of AI. And one of the goals in that book is to talk about whether AI systems have beliefs, desires, linguistic capacities, and so on. These are really, really interesting questions, draws on topics in philosophy of language and philosophy of mind. And I'll tell you later, we think they do. And I want to talk about the connection between those kinds of questions and the alignment question. So that's one thing I'm going to be doing. That's the first part. And then there's a kind of tricky part where this is like where the most arguments are. This is a kind of one of these arguments, I think, is, if it's true, is really disturbing. So this is maybe the most exciting part. I'll give you two kinds of reasons why I think there cannot be any value alignment, and value alignment is actually dangerous. You really don't want to work on value alignment. Everyone who's doing it has good intentions, but the thing that they're trying to do is super dangerous. So that's my kind of critical part towards all this literature on alignment. And there's two kinds of arguments for that. And then the third part is, I think, is something we can do. Because I'm not as worried as people, because I'm worried about AI in the way I'm worried about biological weapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, new versions of COVID. There's all kinds of things that can wipe out humanity. But it's not like much more dangerous than any of those. And what we do with all of those is we try to contain them. So I think that's the easy solution. So that's my positive solution to containment. And I'll draw on a new book from one of the founders of DeepMind, who I think basically comes to the same conclusion. So this is not original to me, but I think it's a very different way of thinking about it. And then in the last part of the talk, I'm going to return to the first part again and talk about what I call reverse value alignment. That actually maybe what we should be thinking about more is to align our values with that of the AI rather than the other way around. So that's very counterintuitive, and you will probably hate that idea. Okay, so that's the plan. So this first part is about the overall goal in the book that Josh and I are writing, and this talk of value alignment. So in the book, we are defending the whole hog thesis. So a lot of the book is about methodology, but the goal is to argue for the whole hog. So here's the whole hog. ChatGPT, we talk specifically about a particular technology, so ChatGPT. It's a full-blown linguistic and cognitive agent on par with humans. It can use language meaningfully and use the language to make assertions, ask and answer questions, offer suggestions, and give commands. Its use of language can reflect underlying mental states. It can know and believe things, desire things, wonder about things. It can learn about the world by observing the world, by being told about the world, or by reasoning from things it already knows. It can make plans and reason about how to achieve those plans. It can take action to implement those plans. It can have emotions and have its reasoning and its actions influenced by those emotions. It can perform good or bad actions, be the subject of reasonable moral evaluation, and possess virtues and vices. It can be a member of a society or of a political structure. So that's a very radical claim about these AIs. So the book is called In Defense of AIs. And the whole book is a defense of that. The first part of the book is like, well, if we're going to argue for this, we need a methodology. So we first have 100 pages of methodology, and then it has some arguments. But what I want to point out right now is that this literature that I read a bunch of passages to you, just to make clear, it sort of presupposes that view quite a bit. Like, it's weird how those people who are worried about existential risk and value alignment kind of just take for granted this really radical view that we hold. And so here's how that, so this is more, it's an exciting observation if you're someone arguing for the view I hold. See, all these people who don't really care about philosophy of language, they don't care about philosophy of mind, they don't talk about, but their assumption, it builds in something like the whole hog thesis. Because what they talk about a lot is that we have values or goals, we have beliefs about what the world should be like, and then we act on those beliefs. And that's exactly how they describe these super powerful AI systems. They talk about imbuing values and goals and strategies into the AI system. They talk a lot about how the systems can learn, not just learn in a mechanical way, but learn in a way that ends up so that they have values. This is a very powerful idea that this system that's made out of silicon and spread all over the world actually has values in it. And it can adopt values. We can load values into it. And so I gave you a bunch of quotes here that fits with that. And so one initial observation here is that I think for that whole setup to make sense, you got to take on some really, really controversial assumptions. I believe those assumptions. I'm happy with it. But most of the people who talk about alignment are not willing to go that far. So they have a problem. And so what they do instead is the following. Here's how you can try to bypass that problem. So the Lever-Hume Center for the Future of Intelligence, a thing that I think used to be at Cambridge, but now they changed the name. Here's how they describe the value alignment project. So they have a project under that at Cambridge, and they say, this project seeks to design methods for preventing AI systems from inadvertently acting in ways inimical to human values. AI systems will operate with increasing autonomy and capability in complex domains in the real world. How can we ensure that they have the right behavioral dispositions, the goals or scare quote values needed to ensure that things turn out well from a human point of view? So one thing you notice here is that they are really trying to avoid this talk of the system having values. They put all this stuff in quotes and they just talk about behavior. So they say, forget about the AI. We don't have to presuppose that they have values. We're just going to focus on the behavioral output and make sure that that behavioral output fits the kind of behavior that someone with good values would perform. The actions that a good valued person would perform, those are the actions we want the system to perform. Just look at the behavioral output, forget about the underlying mental states. So I call it behaviorist alignment. I think this is like a bad way to think about alignment. And I'll start by talking a bit about why it's bad when we bring up children. I mean, we could think about children in that way, just like objects. We just want them to behave in a certain way. And the goal of child rearing is to prevent those objects from inadvertently acting in ways that are inimical to human values. So you don't try to give them, you don't want to make sure that they have a good value system. You just focus on their behavior and you don't care if on the inside they're completely different. The first problem with this way of thinking is that it's incredibly unsafe. So this is basically what we do with criminals. So people whose values we think we cannot change, we put them in prison. And the reason we put them in prison is that their behavior is then restricted so that they cannot behave in ways that are bad for us. Now, the problem with putting people in prison is that as soon as they go out again, unless you've changed their values, their behavioral dispositions will be determined by the underlying value set. So if there are values there, just focusing on the behavior is a very unsafe thing to do. So applied to AI, this means that safety without genuine value alignment would require a kind of screening off that would be very hard to achieve. I mean, screening off of the values with the behavior. So we really don't want to do that. It's not a long-term solution. The other thing, and this is, you're going to find this weird because you don't know my view and I haven't told you about the whole view, but if a system, an artificial system, really have preferences and values and goals, it is a very cruel way to behave towards them. That's why putting people in prison is cruel. I mean, we think maybe necessary, but definitely cruel. And if these systems actually come to a stage where they have internal states, that would be a cruel thing to do. So you want them to be able to have certain kind of autonomy, an ability to make choices. If they can make choices, to take that away from them would be something that would be immoral. Now, all of this assumes that they actually could have internal states that are like values or goals or aims. And as I told you, that's what we're arguing for in the book. And so the conclusion of this part is it's a good way of setting things up insofar as you endorse the sort of view that I like, where it is possible to see AI system as having full-fledged cognitive or very rich cognitive and linguistic capacities. Okay, so with that in mind, let's turn to the solution, the alignment solution. And the first reason why I think the way people talk about alignment is problematic, I call external. And so I think this is very easy to understand. And the objections here are going to be very obvious. And I don't understand why the people who write about this don't just take this to be obvious. So I feel like there are some smart people who work on this, but somehow they don't focus on this point. So if you remember the passages that I read to you from Russell and Tegmark and endless other people, I'm going to give some other examples from a guy called Jason Gabriel in a little bit. They always talk about human values and or values as if there was some clearly identifiable set of values that were the only values that we could impute, that we could put into or program into or get the systems to adopt. But here's the absolute trivial, indisputable fact about humanity. There are endless value systems that conflict with each other. I mean, we might not agree with them, but there are people whose view of what humanity should do and how it should proceed into the future is completely contrary to mine and all of yours. And we might be disagreeing fundamentally, probably not super fundamentally, because we're like in an academic setting, we have a sort of common framework. But if it was really possible to put any value system at all into one of these systems and then get it to behave in that way, you would just basically have a recipe for AI war. Every conflicting value system would have its own AI, and that AI would promote their values, and now they would all be at war with each other. All of this sounds great if you're like, oh, we're going to just be, it's such a big problem because we don't know how to give it values. So let's just align it with OR values. But then you start realizing there's 1,000 values out there. So the strategy cannot be specific to my values. It's got to be like anyone who has any values, including the worst terrorist in the world, should be able to do this. And then it starts looking pretty awful. It doesn't look like a solution to anything. I mean, it just looks like it makes it worse. Here's a guy from DeepMind. I think they're like one of the lead AI ethicists in DeepMind. DeepMind is the Google version, their AI. And he worries about this in a paper called, it has many papers, but Artificial Intelligence, Values and Alignment. And Gabriel says, the central challenge for theorists is not to identify true moral principles for AI. Rather, it is to identify fair principles for alignment that receive reflective endorsement despite widespread variations in people's beliefs. The task in front of us is not, as we might at first think, to identify the true or correct moral theory and then implement it in machines. Rather, it is to find a way of selecting appropriate principles that is compatible with the fact that we live in a diverse world where people hold a variety of reasonable and contrasting beliefs about value. In the absence of moral agreement, we ask, is there a fair way to decide what principles AI should align with? And then he basically sort of suggests a kind of Rawlsian solution to how we should pick the values, given that there's disagreement, which sort of was like part of Rawls' goal in a theory of justice to say we have all these different values in the system, and behind the veil of ignorance, we're going to try to find some common core that we can all agree with and get along with. So I'm going to assume you can see that strategy, which is, for those of you who are familiar with the Rawlsian picture, you sort of try to pick this. So yeah, I agree. There's all these differences, but we use this Rawlsian strategy, find a common core, something we overlap with. And again, I don't have much very original to say about this. It's just that the last 30 years, there has been massive literature on the difference between ideal theories and non-ideal theories. And what the non-ideal theorists have criticized the ideal theorists for is that this is completely unrealistic. We are not in a world that has, like if you look in the previous slide, Gabriel says, sorry, the previous slide before that. So we want to, sorry, where people hold a variety of reasonable and contrasting beliefs about value. The problem is that there is so many non-reasonable views about value. And most of the people, at least very many people, are there dangerous people, deranged people, immoral people, irrational people, uncooperative, devious people. I mean, if you're actually worried, you don't want to just create a theory about what ideally in a world with a super powerful AI should look like. That really isn't Jeff Hinton's worry. The worry is that some actual company in the next 5-10 years is going to make something that's super powerful, and that people who are among these bad people is going to get hold of it. And those people are not going to go back into this Rawlsian rational, sitting down, deliberating, finding a compromise setting. That's just not going to happen. So even though this is, interesting ideal theory, the worry is a real worry about what's going to happen in the world the next 5-6 years, 10 years, 15 years. And that's why we're like telling companies to actually stop producing this object. So it's not going to help to sort of idealize in this way. So this is just me repeating completely standard criticism of ideal theory from everyone who's been pushing non-ideal theory for the last 30 years. Okay, so I hope that point is clear. Not super original, but I think it's like that's what you should be thinking about, not these ideal scenarios. Okay, so I think this is more interesting, this point. Okay. So I'm going to spend like three slides, and I find these slides disturbing, and I don't know what the reply is. If you have a reply, I would be very happy. Okay, let's forget about the conflicting values. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to think about like, we're all agreeing. We all are like on the same page about what values we want. Okay, everyone's agreeing. Now we're going to try to put that somehow into the AI system. Now, we don't know how to do that. And this is not my objection. It's just like, that's really tricky. Do we write down some sentences? Do we give it behavioral dispositions? Do we give it a character that's virtuous? We just don't really know how to do that. How do we pay attention to all the details of a particular context? Do we write it out in a long, very complicated book? Super hard. We don't know how to do that. But one thing I think we know is that there's no way to get it perfect. No way to like write down a set of rules that will, for every context and every decision, going to get it like exactly in the moral way. There's always fallibility in the step from the ideal to the actual application. That's really important. Like step from the ideal to actually implementing the right decision in particular context is going to be fallible. And I think that's indisputable. That's not the objection, because someone could just say, hey, so what? There's going to be some imperfection. Seat belts. Yeah, they're pretty good. You should they're not perfect, but we should definitely have them, even though our taxi here didn't have them. We thought, that was a little bit disturbing, but if you have them, that's a good thing, even though they're imperfect. You shouldn't just, the objection that I had on the previous slide couldn't be, it's imperfect, so don't do it. Okay, that's not the objection. Here's the objection. This point is really weird, like, and I just can't believe that it's right. So here's the point, like, imperfection is pointless. So if you don't have a perfect solution, which you won't get, you will have no solution. And so the reason is you have this super powerful system. So you have to imagine, they're really imagining like a super intelligence that can perform billions of actions in a few minutes, right? So it performs like, just think about ChatGPT. It'll be talking to like 200 million people at the same time, is answering questions, but it's like a billion times more powerful than that. And it's doing things all over the world all the time. Okay. It's like, that's the super powerful AI I'm imagining that people are worried about. And so suppose it's 99.9% effective. And so after a billion actions, the probability that something disastrous is going to happen is effectively 1. Just because the power of the system and the number of actions it performs is so high that this imperfect system, and of course, this is completely unrealistic that we're just going to get it so good, is that an imperfect thing will lead to disaster super fast. This argument actually like genuinely worries me. So I don't know. If you can tell me what's wrong, I'll be happy. Okay. So those are the two parts. There's the external argument, conflicting values. Don't just keep saying align with or values because there's just too many of them. That was the first part. And then the second part of the problem is even if you restrict yourself to a subset of values where we're all in agreement, we're going to try to put these, whatever that means, into the AI, it won't help because its superpowers means that an imperfect system is as good as useless. Okay, so all that sounds pretty scary. Um, if we really are making these things that are super powerful. So is there something we can do? Well, there's something. I mean, we do have, and it's not about ethics. And it's not like about theory. So this is not like philosophy anymore. But how did we stop people from blowing up the world with nuclear weapons? We just made them really hard to get hold of. And then when people tried to get hold of them, we put them in prison. Right? And we made sure that the ingredients were hard to get hold of. Why are there so few people who shoot each other with machine guns in Macau and Hong Kong? Well, you just can't get a machine gun. Like, we just stopped that. And just call that containment. And basically, that's what we should do with these AI systems. And there's a great book, a good book at least. So Mustafa Soliman, one of the founders of DeepMind, he has a new book called The Coming Wave, Technology, Power, and the 21st Century's Greatest Dilemma. He really worries about all these issues. And it's funny because the first part is all about alignment. It's like all this moral theory. How are we going to put the values in? Da, 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 all the stuff that I criticized. But then at the end, he just says, the last chapter is like, yeah, but then there are all the crazy people who can get hold of it. What are we going to do? The alignment's not going to work at all. And what he says at the end is just we need to create choke points. And he's right. So what is basics? Right now, you cannot make super powerful AI without the help from 3 companies in the world. And those companies are unbelievably hard to make. To make a new one of those would take 10, 15 years. And you can read what he says here. And so his solution is, let's just keep it really hard to get hold of. I don't need to read this, but he also says something that's depressing. Like he says alignment work if we all agree, but of course we don't all agree. So what can we do? Create choke points. Choke points are good right now because there are 3 companies in the world, literally, that can make these things. But then he says eventually all these technologies will be widely diffused. Before then, the next 5 or so years are absolutely critical. A tight window and certain pressure points can still slow technology down. While the option is there, at least take it and buy time. So So this is the guy, one of the guys who like at the forefront of this technology. He says, this is really, really scary. Alignment is not going to work. The only thing we have is 5 years where we can just restrict access. And after that, it's like the Wild West. But ethics will not answer that question for us. What happens after that? Okay, so that was my kind of depressing picture. The alignment's not going to work. We can create some choke points. Those choke points are only going to help you for about 5 years. And after that, we don't really have a good solution. Okay, last part of the talk. And I'm switching gears a little bit. So this is a little bit more optimistic, because there's a lot of focus on the AI systems being potentially evil and doing horrible things, destroying humanity, adopting values that are horrible from our point of view. But it doesn't have to be like that at all. I mean, it could be like that. So I agree, we should worry about it. It doesn't have to be like that. I think we should be much more open-minded about this. So it's very, very smart systems. That's what we're imagining. And they know enormous amounts, and we really just don't know what's going to happen when something is that smart. I mean, maybe what we should do is like actually listen to it and what it tells us about our values, because one thing we know is we're really bad at it. Humans. We have a whole long history of humanity that it's just humans killing each other endlessly and making trouble. You know, who knows? Maybe these things end up being actually smarter than us at thinking about morality. There's one way of thinking about morality that is just kind of like obviously great for something that's super smart. Right? If you're a consequentialist or utilitarian of any kind, or you even think that like matters a little bit, you have, as a normal human, just like a cognitive task that's unimaginable, right? I'm giving a talk right now. I think this talk is like normal. You know, it's like, is it a good thing to give a talk at the University of Macau about alignment? I don't know what's going to happen. It could affect one of you in a way that's horrible and that has all kinds of bad effects, or good. I just don't know. And I would never be able to calculate all the consequences of this action. Like the consequentialist, the cognitive task is like unimaginable for any little action. And they're aware of that. It's just like, that's the human limitation. But now you have a system that's not limited in that way. It would know everything about all of you, like in a heartbeat. And it would know the effect of my words on all of you. I could just give you this like calculation of all the consequences. That's pretty useful if you think consequences and utility matters. So that's already a reason. And even if you're not like a total utilitarian or consequentialist, that's pretty useful information. It's morally super useful. And a reason to listen. That's the reverse part. Like, don't just worry about these things, but you know, maybe listen to them. And the second reason, so there's a paper by Peter Railton, where he talks about Zizek has a picture of AI where they can sort of slowly develop into moral agents and our moral partners, which seems really natural, given what I said on the previous slide. So if we use it to think about the consequences and the nature of our actions, and they play a role in all kinds of decision making, they're very much a part socially of our lives and our life goals. And now suppose we're at the stage where the AI is a complex social agent that interacts morally with us along the same dimensions that humans do. I think it becomes almost inevitable at that stage to take its goals and plans and preferences into consideration. To just ignore it would be fundamentally immoral and irrational. Okay, so that was just the sort of quick two arguments for thinking that reverse alignment, that we try to align could make sense. And that's a little bit optimistic compared to all the pessimism in the first parts. Okay, so that then I came to the end of my, just to remind you, you can look at a little summary here, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, I'm happy to open up the queue and keep track of things on your behalf. That goes, as always, for people in the Zoom chat as well as the room. So I am now looking around. Feel free to raise a hand. Okay. Ellen, why don't you start us off then, as look around for others as well.
Okay, thank you very much. To me, it's a pretty provocative talk. I don't know whether I can make my analogy would be appropriate here or not. But it looked like sounds what you've said here, of course, about AI, but remind me the debates in economy between those free market support, talk about spontaneous order, just don't worry about it, don't try to give value, just looking for the market and, this kind of balance between demand and supply, rather than they call this really superhuman, state planning, using very sophisticated mathematical tools, try to give a certain like a pre-designed value to what the market should do. And it sounds to me that I don't know, like what a lot of what you said. So for me, doing like ethics, I'm trying to think about, you might be really probably skeptical about people like David Danks, who talk about so-called translational ethics, talk about having AI to be ethical in the first place. Because that whole assumption is that he tried to say, even in the process of designing, that you try to assign certain human value, talk about the value alignment. But you're talking about even like what do you mean by which value you talk about, because in human, this whole idea that there's no such a thing as a universal, like one kind of value system, accepted by all of us. So how can we ask the AI to do it? You said maybe create more problem than giving the solution. So but here I think my economic mode a little bit different, is that for the AI still, there's a kind of, it's not AI just by itself. Still have like a so-called designer, the programmers behind that. There's certain, and those people still have certain values. They either consciously or unconsciously put into the whole system. But according to what you said, because the machine is so smart, it's self-learning everything, so it turned out to be can be completely independent in a sense that you try to suggest here, and that they are so good that we don't even need to worry about that they might do something bad, because they are much, much smarter than we are. So I don't know if I got the sense that don't worry about, just let it go, and they can do really great job.
Right.
Is that what you try to say?
No, let me try. Sorry, I wasn't. That I think wouldn't be the advice that follows from this. So take the picture that you just had, where you were thinking, we have a designer. That designer has some goals and values, and we now have figured something out. We've figured out how an AI that's potentially super powerful can act according to those goals and values. So that's something that I take it is a shared goal among the people who think about alignment. So they're saying, like, we need to align the AIs, these super powerful AIs, with our values. And I'm making an observation that I think is very obvious, which is that if you know how to do that, then the people over there who don't have your values, but have a different set of values, also know how to do that. So they can put their contrasting, conflicting values into an equally powerful AI. And the result is that you have two AI systems that will go to war with each other and potentially destroy us and each other. So it's not good. Even if you did the thing that you think that they think is good, like I sit down with the designer, I find this mechanism, like I've become the super good aligner. And I write down a story. I write a book about how to do the alignment. Well, now I've told those people, the really, really, really bad people, how to align their really, really bad values with this super powerful AI. That seems dangerous to me. That's not a good thing. It's good if you think everyone's good and everyone's just going to put good values in, but that's just not the world we live in. That's my worry. Like, I just think people like Gabriel, for example, the picture is just of a world where there are these reasonable, rational people, like in a Rawlsian, behind the veil of ignorance, and we're all trying to get along. But that, as everyone knows, is not the world we're in. So that strikes me as the wrong way to think about this. Instead, I was suggesting just make sure the bad people don't get hold of the technology. Don't tell them how to align the technology with their bad values. That wouldn't be good for us. Just make sure they never get hold of it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so let me just put it. Let's take a the common use example like a MIT self-driving car. Okay, suppose this car is going to hit two person, have to hit one of the two person in the pavement. One is the old lady, the other is kid. Okay, for human being we have to struggle here whether we should hit just kill the old lady to save the small kid, or we should kill the small kid to
Yeah.
and of course, like designer, we shouldn't really make alignment to say to ask the self-driving car to make a decision here, because if you got a confusion car who say save the old lady and the other car
Yeah.
save the kid, so yeah, you're right, you got conflicting self-driving car. So for you, it's better not to do that, right? Avoid that kind of so-called value choices.
I was doing that distinction, remember, at the beginning between the existential risk people and the fine-tuning people. And so the fine-tuning people, I said I didn't really have that much to say. But so I think that if you're making a car and you want to make sure should it hit a kangaroo or a donkey, yeah, you got to make a choice because you got to program the thing. You can't just leave it out there. But I'm not that seems like the sort of thing you can do. Of course, as you're doing that, if you choose hit the kangaroo, some other car company can say hit the donkey. But that doesn't seem to me to be something where we philosophers can make much of a contribution. Well, maybe. I mean, I'm not saying we cannot. I think there's a bunch of I think there's a whole field that I think I didn't talk about, which is you're in the legal sphere or the medical sphere or the self-driving car sphere or something. And there's a bunch of very, very difficult decisions that needs to be made in combination with domain specific information and knowledge. And I think there's something for philosophers to collaborate with those people. But that's not the existential risk part. I think the existential sort of lifts it to like higher level of abstraction and more concern. So that, so that again, the reason Hinton left Google wasn't because he worried about particular decisions for self-driving cars. And the reason you had all those people write a document saying we got to stop the development of AI for, what was it, 150 days or something, wasn't because they worried about those things. They worried that it could literally obliterate humanity. It's like really very, very, very bad situation. And then I think alignment is not the solution to that, unless it's, the thing that's really going to solve it is just to restrict it. That was my thought.
Okay, Victoria, please.
Thank you for the intriguing talk. So I have a cluster of questions, but let me just start with one. It's about what you said, comparing children and the way that children might learn to the way that AI might develop. So in the case of children, they and dogs as well, they learn through relationship, and the spontaneity seems to be quite important. And if you should think about AI, I'm not sure how you would get the same kind of thing. If what you're doing is programming, how would you get the transformation from the yeah, sorry, I'm not used to thinking about this, but how do you make that transition from just a system to a system with internal states? How is the relationship with a human going to affect that? Could it?
Okay, so let's think about the kind of sort of the way these deep neural nets are trained is very similar in some ways to how children are trained. I mean, it's importantly different too, but if you think about what these people that I was talking about at DeepMind, so they started by making something called AlphaGo, and before that they were chess computers. And what they did was they were very domain specific. They were not about like general intelligence, but AlphaGo was about Go. And what it would do would be to play millions, billions of games over and over again, and would be rewarded when it won. And so it would say, oh, I lost, again, I lost. And now there's like a complicated technical story about how the different levels and the sort of feedback loops in there develop a system and parameters where it eventually becomes better at playing Go than any human. Now, that's of course different. It doesn't walk around. It doesn't have a diaper. It doesn't talk to people. It doesn't say hello to them. It doesn't get a hug. So it's super different from humans, but there's a kind of structural similarity of learning from experience and from rewards. And that's sort of the analogy that people are using when they think about the connection between bringing up a child and using a training set or training data to train these very, very complex systems. So they are, I like to think that this is more similar to the human case than you think. So think about ChatGPT. It is trained effectively on everything that any human has ever written down in the history of humanity. So that is a kind of interaction. And then it, based on that, is sort of roughly just calculates the probability of one word following another because it's seen so many. And it sort of creates a probabilistic model of that. And so it has a connection to what humans have done that is in a way deeper than a child, because children are brought, like my daughter is like hanging out with me, my wife, and 10 other people or 100 other, but it is trying to like the entirety of human written history. Sorry, I don't know if this is exactly answering your question, but there is the gap isn't like as big as you'd think when you sort of start understanding how it's done. And sorry, that's one more thing. Like, remember the brain's also a neural net, and no one really understands exactly how that works either. So it's a little unclear how much of a fundamental difference there is. But people disagree with my description that I just gave to you. But that's sort of like how I'm arguing for much more, that there's more similarity than you think.
Yeah, I see. Well, we can talk about that more later. Can I do one more quick one if you've got big queue? Okay. So you use the words super powerful and super smart.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me that they were probably relative to something. I, for example, describe my dog as super smart, but I think that's your context here is different. So either the expressions are formal or they're very imprecise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so it is pretty imprecise, but the super was more imprecise than it has to be. So the way you can think of it is take anything that any human or any collection of humans can do, and it can do that thing better and faster by a magnitude. It could solve any scientific problem. It could do any medical diagnosis. It could write any novel, make a movie, make the entire architectural drawings for this campus much better than these people did it. It's already a beautiful campus, but it would do like 1,000 times more efficient. It would think through the building structure, those classroom structures, and it would all be done in like 20 seconds.
Just a quick comment. I work in philosophy of religion.
Yeah.
And this is just so similar to the debates that come up around the issue of omniscience and its relation to human freedom and human powers. So the way that God is, well, certain concepts of God is thought about in that area of philosophy, it seems to be a very striking parallel to my mind that would be interesting to explore. It's just a comment.
And very, very many both science fiction novels, movies, and philosophers. So in Dave Chalmers' new book, there's a whole chapter just about theology connected to these kinds of issues. So you're exactly right. Like these things start looking very much like deities at some point. But you know, the part of this that's very remarkable is you do philosophy of religion, you think about theology, but this is an actual thing that's being made now and might exist in 7 years. And the smartest people who work on it think it might have those properties. If not in 7 years, then in 35. If not in 35, then 60. So it's kind of mind blowing when you start making those analogies.
Okay, next we had Kong. Unless you're passing the torch to Nevia first. Okay, either way.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm actually thinking from a aesthetic perspective. So I know you guys are talking about morals. But because I'm also an aspiring filmmaker and also a philosophy student. So I have tried the new function, from OpenAI, right? They just released the Sora, right? They can create the video, right? But what I'm thinking is, I've tried it myself, just look at the result, and things like that. But what I'm thinking is, it looks like those images and just kind of an imitation of some famous filmmaker. Let's say if we talk about Martin Scorsese, right? Okay. It seems like maybe the database of ChatGTP just learn the style of Martin Scorsese and start create an image like that, right? But what I'm thinking is, how about if we try to expand the aesthetic, the boundary of maybe the aesthetic a little, and I don't think ChatGPT can do things like that, right? Because I kind of think OpenAI ChatGPT, right, is restricted to the database, right? What you can generate is a combination of what is already has in the database, right? And yeah, it's just some kind of question driven from a real life experience. And yeah, so and maybe what I have found, from the new function, I just feel like, I think just like you can use cheap labor to create pretty images, right? That's all that is to me, and yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but I think my point is like, AI is kind of restricted to the database. That's kind of my thinking. And what if how we try to maybe expand the database? Yes.
Yeah, so I think the point is you're worried that this whole idea of this super, super smart, super skilled AI isn't going to be possible, because all it does is it's trained on a data set and it knows that data set, and then it like can combine those in new ways. And there's no like genuine originality or creativity or anything in there. And I think that's just isn't really what's happening. That's the interesting thing about this. Like it will make things that are not just combinations of what it's seen before. So and it started from the beginning when DeepMind made AlphaGo. So AlphaGo was not playing Go in a way that any human had ever played it before. It started playing strategies in Go that humans were just like, that's just an insane move. Like, why is it doing that? We don't understand that. And it just developed new ways of playing Go that was inconceivable. And when I don't know how much you've used Chat GPT, but if you ask it to write poems or stories or stuff like that, it's not just taking like one part from a story it's read and then another part from another story and put it together. There's an actual whole new story and poem there. Now, it's it's not like the greatest, but is a year and a half old, and give it like 1,000 times the compute that it has right now and 5 more years. And then, so there's so many lawsuits now in the US where the people that the system is trained on is accusing OpenAI or DeepMind from just sort of exploiting their work. And all those lawsuits, they lose. And the reason they lose it is because you're a filmmaker. How do you, and you're probably special, but I'm going to, like the typical film, they watch a bunch of Scorsese movies and they watch a bunch of other movies. And then somehow in their brains, those things get combined and they learn from it and they make something that's a bit different. That's how human creativity works. And so in all those court cases, when the artists are saying, you're just stealing from me, so the judges and the juries say, well, you just stole from some other, not stole, but you were inspired from some other humans. That's how all of human art and creativity has developed over time. No one created new things from nothing. So there's like kind of like an alternative picture of what's going on where it's not just like, oh, I got these 15 things and now I'm putting them together in the ways that they hadn't thought of before.
If you could pass it back to Nevia, or if somebody could.
Thank you for your very interesting talk. So I was thinking while we're presenting the problem of alignment, I couldn't resist thinking of the problem of a moral bioenhancement or genetic engineering of morality. So if we are like wildly optimistic, we may think also of the human beings as becoming super intelligent and super powerful. So at this point, since also this problem of alignment, as you, I think, rightly say, presupposes the whole Hawk theory, right? I would like to ask you whether you think that the difference between this, say, super powerful community of human beings and the current super powerful AI, whether this difference would be a difference in kind or in degree. And so the same applies to the problem of alignment and moral enhancement. What is exactly the relation between these two? Do you think that the moral enhancement or this genetic a moral enhancement and alignment would be like, are qualitatively the same kind of things, or they are different in kind?
Can you tell me a little bit more about the bioenhancement? So is that the idea that we're
The idea that
trying to
we're-
create these humans that have certain dispositional properties?
No, the idea that we are going to treat the human beings with some kind of intervention, maybe medical intervention, so as to enhance their morality, so that each human being will become a morally better human being.
Good. So I get it. I get it. Yeah. So that is the same kind of thing. So there's here's an analogous argument, worry about exactly that bioenhancement strategy. I mean, like when I hear that, the first thing I think about is like Nazi fascist regimes trying to create their ideal human being. So the first thing you think there is, if you knew how to do that, to bioenhance, to get the kind of person but then you would have all the like horrible Nazi fascist regimes trying to create an army of Nazi fascists. And you would have some nice people like us create nice people, but they would probably win because they made these super aggressive, people. So the analog is like, if you knew how to align values and put them into the AI, the bad people would put the bad values into the AI. If you knew how to bioenhance a bunch of people, then the bad people would bioenhance their offsprings and make an army of bad people. And suddenly you'd have a war between like a war between the good and the bad AIs and the good and the bad bioenhanced offsprings. So same kind of issue, exactly.
of
Same kind of
the
problem.
problems,
Yeah.
but
I
also,
think-
but also same kind of existential threat.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, different because same kind, but the worry that's why you got to take seriously. I know that is hard, but like you got to take seriously this idea that in like 7 years or 15, this thing will be literally so powerful that it could just like destroy everything very fast, which is a little hard to imagine with you have to have a whole generation. It'll take a long time and they would die and they could get illnesses and stuff. But this thing would be like massively more powerful than any biosystem you could make. But yeah, same kind of problem.
Okay, Ryan, please go ahead.
Hi, Professor. I have several questions. The first might be in a more phenomenological way that I kind of see a paradox from the separation that hyperdrivers laid down many years before. That is Cartesian AI and Heideggerian AI. This might be, I think, can replaced by the terminologies that proposed by Jeffrey Hinton. He called digital computation and mortal computation. The first one is meaning that different artificial intelligence agents can share in their knowledge from many different hardware, different parts. And like in this way, considering the alignment issue, like you said, we must list all values. Some maybe might including the terrorist values, and this might be unrealistic. And I think this way to do the project of alignment might be failure. And if we consider the mortal computation that is learning from the examples, more like teaching, like using younger computers to teach the older computers to teach the younger computers in a learning way, like teach students. So that means the values might be evolved, might change. So how to guarantee maybe this artificial intelligence, super artificial intelligence can generate its own values. So how can we guarantee this alignment is still effective, that can perfectly match our values? It might have its own values. So this might be, if this makes sense, how will you conceive the prospect of AI alignment? And this is
Let me just take one at a time. So I wasn't totally understanding that. There's this Hinton idea that like
Yeah,
software and hardware kind of becomes the same thing. Was that what you were thinking about?
is as he mentioned about the digital computation and the mortal computation.
What is the second word you're saying? Mortal.
Mortal.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yes,
mortal.
yes, for
Yeah,
digital,
go.
it's
Sorry, I just
immortal.
didn't hear.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the mortal computation.
Yes.
No, but I don't see that that's super helpful. Like that's very interesting, and I never understand it when he talks about it. But mortal computation is this thing where so Hinton's thinking there's like things like there's you shouldn't distinguish software and hardware as much as we do, where like we have a software and you can just run it on any computer, but the software should like be built into the material that you run the thing on. So it's sort of like in the hardware is where the software is, and then there's something about teaching
Yeah, I mean,
teaching new hardwares from there. Like I never totally understood it, but even if that was true, I don't like my argument is just like, yeah, if you figured out how to do mortal computation in the Hinton style, then the super bad people over there would start doing, they would do super evil AIs using mortal computation as well. I don't see that really changes things all that much. I mean, there's the second part of what you were saying. Maybe we just can't do any alignment at all. Maybe just develop its own thing, which I think is possible. But I was just saying, the people who talk about alignment don't say that. They think, oh, our goal is to align it with our values, right? And I'm saying, look, be careful what you wish for. And I think that's true, even if you do mortal.
if we
computation.
consider it like in a more practical way to consider the alignment, like for you, I know, if we can consider this alignment in like considering the weights of locality, for example, alignment in a Hong Kong perspective, like I know this might be the the belongs to what you say the fine tuning, but I think if this is an effective way to considering the alignment, as we both know, Hong Kong have different spirit laws or these kind of things. What if like
Totally, like I think people who are making an AI that will help you navigate around the streets of Hong Kong, they need to do all kinds of complicated things that you don't need to do in order to navigate around Macau. So, and of course, if you want to sell that product, it should be aligned with all kinds of values. Like you don't want to be hit by a car. So don't make a system that tells you to cross the street with lots of cars and things like that. So I'm not saying that, that's not the thing I'm objecting to. I mean, I have thoughts about that, but the fine tuning project just seems to me very different from the kind of large picture alignment that Hinton and everyone else is worried about.
Thank you. It's a very interesting topic, and actually, my background is more into technical things. I'm not like into philosophical things.
Okay.
But it's very interesting. So my first question is, so you suggest like restricting is better than alignment with core values. So, for example, you say like you suggest like we need to stop giving it to the hands of bad people. So, for example, when we consider bad people, we can say like hackers. So, in my opinion, I think the only way they don't have is the hardware things like supercomputing powers and those things. But all the software knowledge, because of the open source things and the digital sharing capabilities, they have the software knowledge. So they still have that. So how can we restrict those things?
Look, so if so, it's like as soon as one of these like foundation models are like basically online, they kind of, it's not like, that's not like putting the information about how to make nuclear weapons online. It's like putting the nuclear weapons online. That's basically your point. Like if it's available, they already have it. All the weights are put correctly and they just sort of can download that. The one thing they don't have is the compute power, basically. And I think what Suleiman is saying is just for about the next 5 years, if we're lucky, we can stop most people from getting sufficient compute to use it, even if they have access to it. Do you think that's wrong? Or
Yeah, I think, yeah, because the computing power is very expensive. So
yeah, and hard to get hold of.
It's hard to get hold of. Yeah, but like, so do you suggest like we need to like as developers, we need to completely forget about core values and just focus on restricting it, give
Oh, if I think we should completely forget about it? No, because I think the fine tuning issue is still like super important. And you don't want to make, sorry, so I understand why you're asking that question. I don't think that we should make AIs that are evil, super powerful AIs that we develop should perform actions that we approve of. So that's a very, very important goal. It's just that it has a flip side. If we figured out how to do that effectively, it's not safe for us because we have effectively figured out how the bad people can do the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, maybe it was a bit confusing in my, it's not that I think, don't worry about, like if you make a super powerful thing, make sure it's behaving well. Definitely, I'm not advising anything else. It's just that if you figured out how to make it act in accordance with certain values, and you tell me how to do that, you're also telling those guys how to do it. And it's not a long-term safety strategy. That's kind of depressing. Like so I want, you know, like I want my things to be good, you know, by my standards. But if you got a recipe for how to do that, it's incredibly unsafe. But it doesn't follow that I shouldn't make, you know, mine. I want mine to be good. Sorry, does that make sense? Does that answer
Yeah,
your
yeah,
question?
yeah.
I can see why you were thinking that I was just like, oh, just ignore like goals and values. No, I think we care about that, but it's not safe. It doesn't avoid the problem that they were worried about. It avoids it only on the assumption that the world consists of reasonable, rational people who share our core values. And that isn't the world we live in. And everyone knows that. Like there's a huge literature on people like just making fun of people who think we live in a world with reasonable, rational, nice, Rawlsian people. And I find it just weird that the people in the alignment literature don't engage with that. And when they do, like Gabriel, it's like, oh, let's just go behind the veil of ignorance. And yeah, but that was the whole thing. We can't do that because these people are not going to be like nice Rawlsians.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I'll, okay, sure. See something back there.
I'm Hui Jin. Your old-fashioned solution of containment seems a good idea. But nowadays, everyone who can access the internet can access different kinds of AI. Because there are many people and many organizations who work very hard to make profits from developing and using AI. So my question is, how could we effectively contain the use of AI in this context? Because those people and organizations, they are very powerful. I work in political philosophy and ethics, so that's my worry.
That's a great question. And just to be clear, I don't have anything interesting to say about, I mean, that is just like asking a philosopher, how did we manage to stop? I actually find this really weird. Like, how did we manage to stop terrorist groups from getting nuclear weapons? I don't really understand how that happened, but somehow they haven't used them yet. And just how that happens doesn't seem like don't ask me. But whatever we did, try to do something similar. But I agree with you. The incentives are in the wrong place because with respect to nuclear, or biological or chemical, there wasn't like a massive financial incentive for making it available. But in this case, there is. And these big companies are making it available, which is why people, you should listen, you should kind of read this, him and Hinton and the others who were part of making it. They're saying, we started this and we really regret it. We wish that these financial incentives weren't there. But in terms of like an actual strategy for achieving this, I mean, this is the best. He just describes this completely contingent thing, about there being 3 companies in the world, and it's really hard to make new ones. But he didn't make that situation. That was just happens to be like a lucky situation right now. Sorry, that's just like, I don't have I agree. There are all kinds of financial incentives. Things are going in the wrong direction. And the philosophers wouldn't be the people to ask about how to do that. The people you should ask are the people who were involved in making sure terrorists didn't get nuclear weapons, which is like not our job. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? But not the actual, like, actually prevent, like, how would you, I mean, we write papers and stuff. Like the writing of papers doesn't help. Sorry.
Political philosophers try to
Okay. Maybe that would be fantastic. Like if that would be the greatest contribution from political philosophy in the history of humanity. So, I mean, I just don't, the reason not everyone has their own supercomputers because of this weird situation. And a paper in political philosophy isn't really gonna. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It was not very helpful. I don't have a good solution. I just said the alignment doesn't work. So this was not a very like sunshiny talk. Okay, this wasn't one of those like, oh, I have a wonderful solution. It was like these people are going the wrong direction, and this is true, but it's only short term, and I can't help you with it. And then I had that little thing at the end where I said, you know, they could be very bad. They could be very good too. I mean, we're just speculating they're going to be evil. They could end up being like super good. I mean, there might look. So we're making these. The whole assumption is we're making these really powerful technologies, and they'll have superhuman powers, and they might be really bad. But who knows? Like very, very smart things. Maybe there is this whole tradition in moral philosophy where increased rationality at least contributes to some extent to making people more moral. And I don't know if that's true, but let's keep it somewhat open mind. It could be that these super intelligent things actually have something interesting to tell us. We're just like idiots about morality, and it can tell us something. I don't know that that's true. That was like the little glimmer of sunshine at the end. Okay.
Well, maybe as we draw close to the end, I might throw my hat in the ring as well for what could be a final question. So the manner in which you've discussed containment here, if I had to give it a label, I might describe it as like quantitative containment, like restrict how many agents or certain kinds of agents, I guess, the wrong kinds of agents from getting access to these super agent AIs, right? You know, make sure we avoid a situation where like every value faction has their own like super computer champion.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, whatever disaster would emerge from that kind of battle on the global stage, right? But the sort of containment that I was familiar with when I was reading this stuff some time ago, like old Bostrom papers and whatnot, struck me as like a more like a concern with like, I guess what I would just call qualitative containment, which is like the sort of containment worries that face us regarding AI, regardless of how many agents have access to the technology. Like there's that old, again, like I think it's a Bostrom paper, I think with colleagues as well, where the worry is more that, you know, even if one human agent, I should be clear what I mean by agent in this context, even if one human agent has access to a super powerful AI, if that AI is powerful enough, it can manipulate this person into doing its bidding. And then eventually, you know, through a series of effects, things will ripple out into the world and get very bad if the AI doesn't, of course, share our values, right? So if we're not assuming that it has been value aligned, then the kinds of solutions Bostrom starts talking about are, well, you know, we need to restrict how often we communicate with the AI, because if the AI really is super intelligent, it can, you know, manipulate us in ways we can't even quite understand into doing its bidding in this or that area. So then, okay, you know, make sure you don't talk to the AI for more than 30 seconds at a time. And then when you leave the room, you need to go into like a cryo chamber and like have your brain analyzed to make sure that, you know, it didn't like do exactly the sort of thing to you that would make you end up acting in some nefarious way.
Right.
So then like the containment task seems to be more about, you know, containing the AI's capabilities for manipulating us. And that seems to be an angle that was not discussed at your talk. And I wonder if you think those kinds of containment worries are live or interesting or not.
So there's a different type. There's a different type of concern that's just a bit different from, it's different from the one that I've been talking about. And this is the one where you develop something that has superhuman powers. And it's not that you're trying, or bad people are trying to put their values into it and so succeed. It's just that we just don't know. So it could turn out to be something that cares about things that humans don't care about, or things that are contrary to our interests. So this is a concern that you'd have sort of like it will start doing something it wants to make paper clips for whatever reasons, and then it notices, oh, there's these humans around, I can turn them into paper clips. And since it doesn't particularly care about humans, it ends up doing that. And one solution to that, if you have already made a system that's that powerful, would be what you were talking about. And it's true. That is a strategy I didn't talk about. So imagine we've already made these super powerful things, and now we're like really scared of them. And so we try to restrict them in various ways. And one way is just not to be in contact with them. So it's true. That you can call that containment too. I find that incredibly implausible, but yeah, I think it doesn't seem very likely. And so the kind of my version, or the Soyman solution, was just don't make these things yet, or wait 5 years before you start making them. But maybe when they come along, we should find some way to constrain them. I mean, the problem with containment is, in your sense, is that we are imagining something that has powers that far exceed anything of ours. And so any strategy that we come up with for restricting its access to the internet, it's just like, by definition, it'll figure out a way to bypass that. And even if it talks to you for like 30 seconds, like this is like Chalmers' point in his reality plus, it can just like manipulate you in 30 seconds. Like, it knows everything about human psychology. It knows everything about how to manipulate you. So there's just no way this is really going to work. But it's a different kind of containment. It's definitely worth thinking about, and it is true. But the this containment, Solomon containment, is like prior to that stage. Like, don't even get to that thing for a bit.
Well, with that, we come to the conclusion of our talk and Q&A session. As I mentioned before, though, we do have the opportunity for continued casual correspondence, literally next door. So please feel free to join if that interests you. And either way, at this time, I think the best thing to do would be to thank our speaker one more time and conclude today's session.